Hey, gang. Welcome back to another Rest, Eat, Move podcast. I'm in the hot seat today. This is Chris. And I don't know what Matt's doing. I'm not sure what he's doing. He's probably just hanging out. Who knows? By the time you're listening to this, Thanksgiving is going to be over, but we're getting ready for that. My birthday is actually tomorrow. This is a big week for us. So my birthday, I turned 66 on Wednesday. Thanksgiving's on Thursday. You're going to hear this on Monday or whenever you're listening to it. But the holidays are here, and I think November, December are the two kind of my favorite months of the year. I like the transition. I like all that stuff that comes with it. We got a lot of sales going on, so check out if you need cod liver oil or spirulina chlorella or whatever you need, but feel free to reach out to that. Also, the book. We still have the Rest, Eat, Move book, and just to let everybody know that you get the audio with that if you order it from our website. So lots of good stuff coming on. Matt's been at a couple things, new things coming out. We're probably going to have this thing called Epsom salts with essential oils.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think you're going to be excited about that. But enough of that. Housekeeping for Ontario Living. Again, lots of good stuff coming up this year. But I have my sister in the house today. So my sister Paula, out of the three of us, my older brother Nick, and then my younger sister Paula.
The troublemaker in the middle.
Not troublemaker in the middle. I'm in the middle. But my sister is, when we lost my mom a few years back, I really looked at my sister as, kind of a spitting image of my mom in certain things. Certain
You're
things.
Gonna try to make me cry here? I mean,
Well,
seriously.
I'm just saying. So what I really was, again, I'm not getting down the rabbit hole too far here, but just the caring and love you had for your mom. And it was just.
So did you?
Yeah, but it was really special. The way you took care of her and all that stuff. So, anyway, I just want to give you a little backstory on my sister. She just has a great heart. She's in this space. She's been in it for a long time, and it's always good to have her coming back. She wrote a book called Nature's Child. She'll talk a little bit about that today. We have these available, so if you need to get a hold of those, let us know. Shoot us an email. We're happy to get this to you. But which led us into this conversation that we're going to have today. So with that being said, I'm going to let my sister introduce herself a little bit. She's been in this space her whole career. Now she's in a different space in her career. But with that being said, honey, welcome to the Rest, Eat, Move podcast.
To be back. This is super fun. I think the last time I was here.
Yeah, get a little closer to the mic. Yeah, there you go.
Kristen.
Yeah.
We kind of went over some similar kinds of things, but we're going to talk a little bit.
Move a little closer. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
But you also did a yoga retreat with Kristen.
We just got back
in
from
California,
and that was just amazing. It was just such a. I really felt the difference coming back after that. Just the rest and restoration that you get when you just kind of focus on, and you're just in that space where you're in nature, and then you're just with these amazing women, and then you're eating great food, and we did a great hike, and
all the stuff that goes with it.
Yoga. It was just, and I'm not even like that much of a yoga person, but it was really great.
Right.
It was so fun. Yeah. That was
so
great.
move just a little closer to the mic.
Oh, I'm still not.
There you go.
Close
or
enough?
you can pull the mic towards you.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Matt's going to be mad because I didn't do a little housekeeping here, on that. But
is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yep. So again, you had that. I actually spent some time with your son Mac and his girlfriend Allie up north last weekend, which was really fun. Yeah, it was really fun to spend time with them. Yeah. So give the listeners a little backstory on your career.
Okay, so I just retired after 38 years. As an occupational therapist, and I've spent the majority of my career in working in a program called Early On, which is a birth to 3 program for children that have special needs and children that are at risk for different kinds of issues. And so, which I really enjoyed that job. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm struggling a little bit actually, because I'm trying to find my new purpose and my new goal and my new whatever. I thought I would be just running for the hills, super excited. And like first couple weeks I was, and then I was like, okay, now what? But so I worked as an OT for 38 years, learned so much along the way. I really have a passion for working with children. And about 15 years ago, I went back to school and became a naturopath, which is actually we consider ourselves more of an educator than a doctor, even though it's considered a naturopathic doctor degree. But we really want to empower and educate people on how to deal with the body, how to deal with children, how to deal with different kinds of issues related to all sorts of things to deal with health, which we're going to talk about today. And that really changed my career in terms of how I interacted with the kids and the families, and giving them, instead of them all their children always being on medications, there was always another way. And that's kind of what led me to write the book, because I used to always get the question, what's wrong with my kid? Meaning, like, whether it was a behavioral issue, or they had an ear infection, or they were moody, or they didn't sleep, whatever the issue was, instead of throwing medication at it, we wanted to look at it a different way. So my book is more of a reference book in terms of looking at just what would you do instead of just the typical, be on antibiotics for an ear infection kind of.
And again, you and I talked about, when you were writing this book, about the title.
Yeah.
And you wanted to name it, what's wrong with my kid?
Right.
And then, but you kind of wanted to go, well, I don't really want to, what's wrong with my kid? You want to go more on the positive side.
Right. I would get that question all the time. And my husband, Dave, was he really wanted the book to be named that for some reason. So I didn't do that. I named it Nature's Child, because I just thought it would grasp more people's attention too.
But really, the conversation is, what's wrong with my kid?
Right. That's the conversation.
And so you and I talked a little about this, and you have, I think I want the listeners to understand that not only you were educated in this space, but you lived it.
Yeah.
And so you could see if they're drinking too much, processed milk, or too much processed whatever, or, their behavior or whatever. It's all linked together. And that was kind of like, okay, I've been doing this so long, I really need to treat the problem, not the symptom.
Right, which is a naturopathic value.
Right.
It's just you go back to the root cause.
Right.
We've talked about that, which is definitely what On Target Living does too, is we're looking at the root cause and trying to find ways to bring that body back in balance, as opposed to just covering up symptoms.
So for the everybody out there, just think about this too. You probably have, whether it's, nieces, nephews, kids, grandkids, whatever. We're all going to be surrounded by kids, but sometimes you have to step back. Paula and I have 5 grandkids now, and it's interesting when they eat well and they get outside and move, and then they get enough sleep, their behavior's pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you start taking some of those pieces out of the pie, behavior's not so good.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting, like when they come up north in the summertime, they're tired, they sleep well, they're active, but sometimes it's, again, life. Everybody gets busy, but I think that's what we wanted to kind of discuss today. So that's the title of this podcast today, is What's Wrong with My Kid?
Right.
So why don't we start out? You have 5 of these, and so we'll kind of summarize them at the end. But the first one is ear infections.
Probably the first question I get from parents, because number one, childhood type of illness and or otitis media. So you just basically, kids are having ear infections. Part of that is their anatomy. And what I mean by that is those eustachian tubes are more horizontal with children until they get a little bit older. So the drainage can't happen as well. So over time, that's what's going to happen. And then other things will kind of relate to what can cause those ear infections. So what typically is what we do is they go on antibiotics. They go to the doctor, they go on antibiotics, and then they have these reoccurring antibiotics, which then sometimes leads to gut issues because it strips away the good flora in the gut and all of those types of things. So I try to present to them, let's look at it a different way. What is causing those ear infections? Is it a food sensitivity? Are they just not in good health? What is going on with that? And one of the big things that we talk about usually is dairy. And I just say, I'm not saying your child is allergic to dairy, but dairy is a clogger. It causes mucus to happen in the body. So mucus sits in those eustachian tubes, and then the next thing you know, you have an overgrowth of bacteria, and then you've got an ear infection. So then how do you treat that? So number one, I look at going back to the cause. Maybe we have a food sensitivity. Maybe they're eating too much sugar, which is also causing that bacteria to grow. So looking at the diet, number one, you want to look at that foundation, as you guys talk about all the time, first. And then there's other different things that you can do to help with ear infections. Super simple things like just doing some ear drops. At the health food store, you can get these mullein and garlic ear drops. So instead of running to get an antibiotic, maybe we just put some ear drops in their ear. That takes care of the bacteria, and then we're not into that antibiotic roller coaster.
So let's back up for a second. So okay, so we're gonna look at what they're eating, and you've always told me about this, kind of educated me, but what they crave the most is what they probably need to avoid.
Yes,
So
and
whether
that's true with all of us.
Yeah. So
What
it's
your
cheese
trigger
or milk
foods
or whatever.
are usually your and they're usually ultra processed foods.
So ultra processed foods, look at that, especially the dairy, and then from there, the drops. So if I go to the health food store, what am I looking for?
You can just go into that children's section, and you'll see them. There'll be like a little thing right in this section where the colds and that kind of thing is. They'll have these drops, and the two ingredients they usually have them is garlic, and the other one is an herb called mullein.
So mullein and garlic are the two what we're looking
Right.
for
Right.
with the drops in the children's section at the health food store.
Right. And mullein is an herb that's used a lot with any kind of any upper respiratory issues. Mullein is used for that, used a lot of times with asthma, but it helps with
And I think you've kind of helped me along the way. Even I wrote in my Rest Eat Move book about body care, and that was basically a lot from what I've learned from you. But that's a powerful way because, again, I remember when the kids growing up, it's amoxicillin, it's all that
Right.
stuff, constantly had earaches, bad gut health. I didn't know any of this stuff, and I wish I would have, we would have both of us would have this knowledge at where we're at. So anything else besides that? So those for ear infection?
Other really interesting things to do is, number one, chiropractic. The chiropractors if you take your child to the chiropractor, a lot of times they just manipulate behind the ear here. They manipulate that bone. And that can really get things draining really well, because that's what we just want to do. We just want to get it draining. We're not necessarily always going to stop the fluid. And then that's where eustachian tubes come in, the PE tubes. They put those in to keep those tubes open. But the problem is with that, you'll see kids having repeated tubes they fall out after a while. So they get tubes over and over and over again. And
so going to the chiropractor and doing, Jill Marlin's taught me a lot from peak performance physical therapy that, almost everything comes from the spine.
Yeah.
So if you can look at chiropractic medicine and things like that, I think that's a great idea. I never thought of that.
Another easy thing is to take some essential oil and, again, go behind that ear, and you would go around the ear and just down. So you're basically pulling the fluid into the lymph system, so, again, to get it to drain.
Any specific essential oil you would recommend?
Anything that is going to be more respiratory oriented, like eucalyptus would be good. Young Living makes one called RC that I really like. Lavender oil is basically, they call that kind of it can do everything.
Right.
So if you don't know which oil to use, just go for lavender, because it's got
lavender or eucalyptus would probably be a great idea to put just around the ear.
Right. You just do, and you just
so
always
I
want to
got
stroke
that.
downward,
So
going
we got
around
the
the ear
food.
and going down.
We got the dairy. We have the drops.
And then the other thing is, again, I always go back to the gut health and looking at a probiotic. It's not the first thing you do, but sometimes if a child is not getting those things in their diet, which a lot of times they're not, it can sometimes help to just boost that gut health, so they're not as,
this is why we recommend spirulina chlorella for the kids.
right.
Because
Exactly, helps with that gut.
yeah, they like if you looked at like Brady will just chew it like a M&M, and it's just good. Kristen has him
Amazing.
doing that. So,
Yep.
all right, that gives us a lot of information on the ear. So we got the drops. We look at the food. So the drops would be garlic and mullein. We talked a bit about the essential oils. We talked about chiropractic health, and then get the gut healthy, obviously, for almost everything.
And then probably another one I'd add on that is to just get some things moving would be to be jumping on a little, like
so like your
rebounder,
lymphatic
little
system.
trampoline.
I
Yep.
like that.
Just to get something moving in there.
Just get it
Because
moving.
really, if you think about the body, anytime anything stops, it always wants to be in motion, no matter
Yeah.
what's going on. If anything stops, fluids aren't leaving.
Yeah,
things
it's
that
just not- the body's
that's
not eliminating.
How you get, breast cancer, different kinds of things.
Yeah.
The lymph system needs to
Got to
move.
get Floyd moving to have a bowel movement.
Yep.
All right, which leads us into the next one,
Yeah.
which is your bowel. And so talk us
This
a little
is
bit
so
about that.
easy.
I know,
It's
I
so
love.
easy.
You taught me this 100 years ago.
And then one of the sayings I used to always say to parents is, well, like I would get these feeding evaluations, right? They'd say, oh, the child's not eating. Then I would say, are they pooping? And then they're like, no, they're not. They don't. They have a bowel movement once a week. But my doctor said that's perfectly fine. I'm like, okay, children almost go every time they eat. They almost have a bowel movement. So at least 1 to 2 times a day, and they need water. They need fiber. And they need foods that are very rich in magnesium, which we talk all the time about that. So magnesium is the relaxing mineral of the body. It has to come through food. You can take magnesium supplements, but there's plenty of foods out there that children like.
Yeah, we
dark.
don't need to do that. We
Yeah.
just need to eat oatmeal and some real fruit and stuff to get
Yep.
that fiber
Oatmeal
and
has
the
magnesium in it.
magnesium foods.
So I look at that first, and a lot of times I'll find out that they're not getting enough water. And water doesn't necessarily have to just be water. There's a lot of kids, if they're eating enough fruit, they're going to be getting enough water. So that's number one.
Let's back up for just a second. I think that's a big point is the water. Because if I looked at, I'll just use our grandkids or myself, it's kind of the challenge. They get busy, whatever. So if you're having problems with that bowel movement, and if, you and I, we talked about this a couple weeks ago in one of our podcasts, we grew up on kaopectate.
Yeah.
So we had diarrhea. So if we're having diarrhea or we're constipated, something's out of whack.
Yep,
So now
something's out of balance because it's always about balance.
It's all about the balance. So again, that's a great question to ask: is what's the bowels looking like?
Because it's train in, train out. This is how children work. If they don't have a bowel movement, then they're backed up, and their intuitive nature is going to be not to eat. But as adults, we just keep packing it in. But children are different. They know when their body isn't feeling right, and it's amazing how they have. In fact, I was watching Paige, our granddaughter, this weekend, and she hadn't gone to the bathroom, and I noticed she had some fluid, some discharge or little bit of snot coming out, and I said, "Oh, honey, you just need to have a big poop." And she, "Oh yeah, Keek, I need a big poop." She had a big poop that day, and that discharge stopped, and it was like she just bounced right back. It's amazing when you eliminate how well we all feel good.
Yeah,
after
so
that.
they got to drink the water, they got to eat foods high in magnesium, fiber, they got to get moving, because if you're trying to get them to have a bowel movement, they got to move. So
Good fats, as we know,
healthy fats,
chia,
flax,
flax, all of those things.
cod
which
liver
kids,
oil.
You can really get anything that's a lubricant that's like a food like that.
I always
that's
tell
good
them,
fats.
you guys, you take
Yep.
this, you're not going to have a problem pooping.
Yep. And dairy, again, is a clogger. A lot of times the kids just can't break that dairy down, especially if your child has those balls. Their poop looks like those little pebbles.
Yeah, they're just
That tells you they have a lot of constipation, a lot of dryness inside their bowels. So get
them to drink that water, get them to eat the healthy fats, get them to consume magnesium foods, which mostly is in fruit.
Sometimes the position, the squatty potty, make sure
Squatty
the feet are
potty.
supported.
Yeah, the squatty potty. I remember Kristen bought me a squatty potty. I'm like, Kristen, why do I have a squatty potty? She goes, Dad, it'll make you eliminate easily. I'm like, I don't have a problem.
It puts the position of the pelvis in
Right. I get it. People are like, what are you talking about, a squatty potty? So
so that's an easy one. GERD is probably the other digestive, issue that I see a lot. And that's a lot of times just looking at those processed foods. If you
just the
get those
pH is out of
there.
whack a little
Yes.
bit there.
Right.
All right, so bowel movement's a big deal. Then from there, we move into number 3, which is emotional distress. Walk us through that a little bit.
Okay, so especially the population that I was serving, birth to 3, there's tantrums all the way along there, right? Because children just use emotional outbursts or melting down, as people want to call it, or a lot of times that's just a nervous system emotional discharge. So a lot of times, if their body is so revved up, which our kids are so revved up, it can really make their nervous system out of whack. So one of the things that's been really interesting I've just learned this by accident, is I have one of those vibration plates, which you do too. And what they are is they just jiggle, they're electric, and they kind of just jiggle your whole body. And there's a lot of reasons that they're really powerful. But for the kids, just sitting on that before they go to bed, it's amazing. That's just one idea of what I'm talking about. So they really need that movement. And a lot of times I coach the families on making sure that they get enough physical movement, just like you were talking about in the summertime when they're outside. So being out in sunlight is really important. Getting some outdoor time, limiting screen time before they go to bed. Again, making sure they're having those foods that their brain is going to calm down with, like the cod liver oil, the magnesium foods, all of those types of foods that help to kind of relax the body, which is going to obviously relax the nervous system. Those are going to be some big things. Homeopathically, I love something called Calm Forte, Forte, Calm Forte. It is basically a little sugar pellet that you just put in the child's mouth, and it kind of works like magnesium, but it's on a completely different level. It's on an energy-based level. That's how homeopathy works. It's kind of like cures like, and that's a whole nother podcast. But homeopathy.
Where would you get that at?
Health food store.
Okay. So that's Calm Forte.
Yes, and they've done a really nice job. You used to have to homeopathy is based on, like I said, like for cures like, where you'd have to know the symptoms and then you treat based on the symptoms. Well, now they make it really easy for you. They've got a homeopathic version for colic, a homeopathic version for ear infections, for colds, for flu, all of the different ones. So they're out there. They're really easy, accessible, and babies and children are safe to take those, and they're approved by the FDA.
And you talk about touch. Talk about touch for a second with the nervous system.
So yes, massage is one of the things I teach my families, and as we know, when we've done a massage as an adult, you just get very calm from that, because that deep pressure touch releases those endorphins to get the body to calm down. So just even doing something like that before bed, it doesn't have to be a full body massage. Maybe you just massage their tummy, or you massage their arms or their legs, but any kind of deep pressure touch is going to help with that. They have things now like weighted blankets and all these different weighted things that do also help with those things too, but a lot of times just a massage will do the trick.
It's interesting, like, again, as kids, most of the kids like touch. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them.
Yes.
But it's interesting when you kind of touch their scalp or their feet or maybe their calves or the back of their legs.
Yep.
They just
some kids like that tickly. That can be very calming. So it
very
depends on the child,
yeah.
but generally deep pressure touch is the touch they're going to accept the best.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and so that can really be helpful. They even have sheets now that are like stretchy, almost like that Under Armour material. That's like a pocket, almost like a kangaroo.
Yeah.
And the kids get in there and they get that pressure on their body.
Yeah, because I remember you talking about that as like if you're, you have a young infant and they just get so close. That's what the sleep sacks are about. Yeah.
The sleep sacks are amazing because what it is a boundary. Their feet touch a boundary, and they're looking for that boundary. Back in the day when our kids, we had the bumper in the crib, and our kids would be like moving their head up against that.
Is that why Floyd likes to lean up next to me when he sleeps?
They just love that pressure touch.
Yeah.
Exactly. And some kids need that more than other
pushing
kids.
Me off the bed.
Yep.
So the emotional, if they're having a meltdown, because again, I think we've all had experience of that. But is there anything like during that meltdown? I mean, do you talk about, obviously during that episode, but I found that we've done a lot with schools, but breath is such a big deal for the nervous system.
Kids how to, I start with like saying, okay, we're going to blow out a birthday cake. So understanding that just because sometimes when you try to, or get your belly to come up, that kind of thing. Put the book on the belly. Some of those kinds of things can really be helpful. I've also done the emotional freedom technique, which is the tapping, where you do the different spots. Kids love that. They just love that. And
That's interesting. I like that idea. So it's just tapping of the face.
it's actually, I want to say it's like 10 or 12 points. You can look it up. It's called The Tapping Solution online. And there's like a 3-minute video, and they show you exactly how to do it. You start here, and then you move up to the eye, and then basically you're touching all these different acupressure points. And that helps the body to calm down. Now, as adults, you can do it for anxiety and say, even though I'm feeling very anxious, this tapping is going to help me be calm. And you do like 3 rounds.
Do you remember, did you have Real Turcotte at Sexton?
Yeah.
And do the applications of physiology? I wrote about that. But, when I was a junior in high school and actually a senior in high school, we took this applications of physiology. And everybody called it the sleep class. But really it was muscle contraction, relaxation, muscle contraction and relaxation. And you're teaching the nervous system basically how to slow down.
Yes.
And
right.
I was thinking, later on, we don't think of it while we're in school, but this should be taught everywhere.
Yeah.
Or the breathing techniques.
Breathing is huge.
So
and
huge.
Why it's not, it's becoming popular now,
Right.
but for children even, you can teach children how to breathe.
Well, even, hot and cold therapies turned into such a big deal. We've been talking about it forever, but,
Right.
Those are all things, hot and cold therapy, the touch, the breath. These are really, we should be teaching our kids at an early age. This is a skill.
Right. And again, go back to even like essential oils. So having a diffuser in their room is really helpful. So you could diffuse some lavender at nighttime. And then during the day, it can be really powerful to do some of those citrus oils because citrus keeps you alert but calm. So it's I've done that with daycares. I brought citrus oil in and talked to them about that.
When I was writing my book, I would set up my, what do you call it, where you get the nice
the atmosphere.
And everything else. But I kind of I need to get my diffuser out. I have this beautiful globe. It's beautiful. There's no reason I can't have it here.
There's different
essential oils you can use. Absolutely.
Mental clarity. There's different.
Right.
So there's many different things, but kids generally love the citrus
oils.
So
everybody think about that. Maybe you have a diffuser you have at home.
Yes.
I just kind of gotten away from that a little bit. I like that idea.
I used to like with my kids when I'd come home is the first thing I'd have them do is to do some movement. We wouldn't do homework right away. So I would have them just do a lot of movement. Just go out, play basketball, just do those kinds of things before we sit down to do homework because that would help, again, calm the nervous system through the movement. And then when we came in, no TV on, I'd have candles going and I'd have some kind of music and the diffuser. And they would pick sometimes they would decide what smell
Maybe that's
they
my
want.
mistake when I was going to school. I didn't get outside enough early before I was having the bad behavior anyway.
No, you were outside all the time.
All the time. All right, so number 4, which kind of leads into what we've been kind of talking about, is sleep. So number 4 is sleep. So walk us through a little bit about that for the kids.
So because I was kind of putting the two of them together. So again, going back to looking at their diet, any ultra-processed foods is going to jack your nervous system up, no matter what. It's just going to jack your nervous system up because you're getting sugar, you're getting a lot of preservatives, additives, GMO, all those kinds of things are going to affect the nervous system. So looking again back at those magnesium-rich foods, looking at fish oil, looking at anything to calm the brain, limiting screen time. Screen time can really, I know it's hard.
Let's stop for a second there.
The screen time a lot.
This is what makes me really nervous about our kids, next generation, kind of everywhere. Me, I'm not I'm happy that I'm not interested so much in my phone and all the stuff that comes with it, but
I make my family crazy.
I think it's turned into a major problem. I was traveling to Atlanta last week, and I was in the airport, and I was just kind of I try not to be that guy sometimes, but I'm looking around, and everybody's got their head down, bad posture, everything else, and they're all engaged in their phone. They're not really talking to anybody. But
it's almost odd to see somebody not doing that, isn't it?
And so I really get nervous or anxious about the kids building these such poor habits and looking at that and the nervous system never really getting a chance to relax. which leads to bad
it can
sleep
never get out of sympathetic. You're at a low level sympathetic
all
nervous
the time.
system all the time. And then on top of that, to not, I go down this rabbit hole really easy, but we've moved to Sanibel in Florida, and with a new house, because we lost our house in the hurricane, and with a new house, they have to have these smart meters. So I was noticing I wasn't sleeping. Well, the 5G is part of, and I'm very, very sensitive to what's called electromagnetic fields. They call them EMFs. And you can go up to your outlets, you can go up to, and so if you think about it, these are little bodies that are going to absorb those frequencies a lot, even more so than adults.
Yep.
And so some of those things can be very powerful too. So that's the screen time's going to do that. The phones are going to do that. Even your Wi-Fi. Dave just thinks I'm nuts because I want the Wi-Fi turned. I want everything turned off at night. You know, it's the whole blue light. I want everything, the dark room, all of that really can affect.
Heavy blankets, temperature,
making
magnesium,
sure the temperature's cold
daily
enough,
movement,
all of that. So,
because if the kids aren't sleeping, that's a major problem.
Right.
And then they develop such bad habits, because this is what I'm dealing with right now. Where do these bad habits around sleep develop? They have to develop sometime.
Yes.
And they developed really early on. And now I hear this all the time. I just don't sleep. What? I just don't sleep. I only require 4 hours of sleep. No, you don't, if you want to have a healthy brain. So I think it's a big deal to get these habits developed early on.
You know, like we've talked about, like sleep, just like getting into healthy eating habits, you have to get, it's a hygiene, like they call it sleep hygiene.
Yes.
You have to do those steps, you know, kind of wind down before you go to bed. I mean, I know if I'm watching TV, if I don't have the blue blocker.
Well, and I like the word you just said, wind down, because I always tell people, you don't want to land a plane abruptly. You need to have a long runway.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with your sleep. You need to have that runway into sleep, especially with your kids.
Right.
You know.
And the other piece that I can't say enough about, and it's hard here in Michigan, but is to get outside, because if we can get some of that sunshine, and you know, the sunshine, when it comes through your irises, it's really downloading so that you'll have serotonin, which then makes your melatonin, which then will help you sleep. And I noticed when, like I said, when we were with Paige, we went to the zoo, we were outside, it was kind of cold, but she got back and she was just exhausted. And she's used to going all the time, but I think it was just the fresh air, you know, all the things.
All the stuff.
You know, like kids sleep better in the summer.
Yeah.
They just do, because they tend to be outside more.
Well, it's interesting. We did a conference a couple weeks back, and it was called Heal a Healer. And I remember one of the presenters talked about dopamine and serotonin, and, you know, pleasure's dopamine and happiness is serotonin. Again, we need to really get back to why are they craving this, because that's the dopamine.
Right.
But if we can get more serotonin, that's gut health, and that's the sunlight, and that's you know, all that stuff that goes with that.
Yeah.
All right, so the last one's one of my favorites you're going to talk about, number 5, and it's your skin.
So the skin, as we've talked about before, this has been in my book about the bulls. So the skin is your biggest detoxifying organ. It's your biggest organ, but it's one of the biggest detoxifying organ. And so if you see children, it's not necessarily normal for children to have skin issues. And the one I see the most is eczema. So they typically have it like around armpits, behind the knees, sometimes on the side of the trunk. They'll have these little patches. And again, first thing I do is go back to their diet. What's in their diet that's because the skin is going to try to push things out.
Yeah, you've always said that body heals from the inside out,
top down, in reverse order that the symptoms occurred.
So repeat that. Body heals from the
inside out.
Inside out.
Top down. So you're going to heal from your head before you are your feet. So if your feet are a mess, you need to do something up here first, you know. And
you see that a lot. I mean, sometimes you go to the locker room and at the Mac and you see these older gentlemen's feet and you're like, wow, what's going on here?
Right.
But the feet, as you know, the skin shows a lot.
The skin shows a lot. And then in the reverse order that symptoms appear, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if the symptom just came, then that's going to be the first symptom to go away. If you have a symptom you've had for 12 years, that's going to be the last symptom to go away. So it kind of has to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, for me, and it wasn't so much for you, but I had bad skin for 10 years of my life,
Yeah,
and
you
they
always
just
had bad skin.
they used to always give us stuff, topical creams, oral meds, and when I cleaned up my diet, my skin got better almost instantly. So when I hear this all the time, and you've talked about this forever, and go back to the bowls just for a second, just to kind of review. Some of you not familiar with the bowls, BULLS. So walk them through the bowls. That's basically how we eliminate.
So you need to have all 5 of your elimination channels open.
Got to have the super highway open.
You have to have that before you start any detoxifying plan, before you get in the weeds about something. Just go back to the basics. So we look at that first. When somebody says to me, I really want to lose weight, or I say, well, okay, let's look at the bowls first.
Got to get the highway open.
Yep. So bowels, you got to be eliminating 1 to 2 times a day. Urinary system.
And let's stop for that. So I did an event this past week, and one of the people in the audience said, well, whatever's normal for you. I'm like, no, that's not true. If you're eliminating once every 2 days, that's a great sign that something's out of balance.
Right.
So it might be normal for you, but it's not normal. So we should be eliminating, as soon as Floyd eats, I take him out for a walk, he's going to eliminate. So that's the first one, is the bowls, and the B, the bowel.
And if you think about that with animals, they're so sequential like that. And then they have all this energy. They've gone to the bathroom, and now they're ready to go.
Oh, yeah, he's ready to go.
Yep.
All right, so number 2
is the urinary system.
So again, if I'm eliminating,
so you just want to make sure that you're hydrating enough, and you can tell that by the color of your urine. Does it look like a white wine, like a Chardonnay?
Yep.
Is it not cloudy? Can you see right through it? It doesn't have a smell.
And you can overhydrate too.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that's another.
So you don't want your urine to be clear.
Always clear, correct. Yeah, Matthew Cross used to always talk about that when we did some work with him and Dr. Phil. But your urine should look like Chardonnay. All right, so then what's the 2 L's?
The lungs. So you're eliminating through your lungs. We don't think about we're eliminating through our lungs, but if we are these shallow breathers all the time, and we're never getting those deep, really good deep breaths, we're not working that diaphragm. There's, like, you talk all the time. You've brought that to that space really nicely about how we can change our state instantly by
changing how you breathe.
Changing your breathing.
Yeah.
So whether you're working hard running, children do a pretty good job with their lungs because they scream.
But I like what you said too, is blow out some birthday candles. Or like have them blow up a balloon. You see they're really working their diaphragm hard.
Right.
So
Some
and then
of
your
those kinds of
second L
is the lymph system. And this is a system that is overlooked, but the only way the lymph system can work is through massage, where somebody else is moving it, or you're moving it through exercise and that kind of thing.
It doesn't have a pump. We need
have a pump.
We need to help the pump.
And that's really important to get those toxins moving, because again, back to when I was saying that if things get stagnant in the body, that's when we got problems.
And not so much for the kids, but certain things we don't want, like you said at the beginning, we do not want to, before we work with the kids on this, or adults, got to get the super highways open. But a big part of the lymph is we're not going to block it.
Right.
So we're not using antiperspirants and things like that to block the armpit. So that's a big one.
Right.
When
you
you
can
look
have
at
deodorant.
You can have
deodorant
deodorant.
is going to have a scent, but you're still going to sweat through
You can have crystals. You can do deodorant.
Yes.
But if you can't eat it, sometimes you want to put it on your body.
Right.
And the last one is what we're talking about, is the skin.
Yeah.
As you said before, if the skin is showing you something,
Which
the body's
is very much related to gut health. So
right to
when
gut
I
health.
see children like having some issues with their skin, I'll review their diet. I'll talk about their elimination. We have to just kind of go back to the basics, kind of get an idea of what's happening there. And then maybe they're not getting certain nutrients. Maybe they're not getting those omega-3 fats that really help the skin. We need fat in our diet, and children do not a lot of times get enough fat.
Yeah, so especially families out there, make sure your kids are getting healthy fats. That's the cod liver oil, the flax, the chia, the nuts, the seeds.
All of those kinds of things.
Olive oil, coconut oil, avocados. We want to get the healthy
minerals,
fat.
which would be, the spirulina, chlorella, and just the foods.
And just start eating real live foods. If the food's live, it's generally going to have a bunch of nutrients plus the fiber and all this stuff with it. So I think that's the big deal, because when you look at, if the bowls are not open, you're going to have a lot of problems, whether it's, the gut's not
Because
working
something's
right.
stuck.
Something's
Something
not-
is not moving.
Correct.
Exactly.
And I remember, you remember this too, but, acne, and I had severe dandruff. Well, hello. I remember when I was like a junior in high school, I couldn't wear anything dark because it would be like Pigpen and, Charlie
right.
Brown. I mean, this stuff's flying everywhere. And I'm like, wow. And they'd give me this shampoo or this lotion, whatever. It was my gut. So
Right.
if your kids are really having problems with their skin, we need to focus
Right.
on that.
And then the other piece that I want to say about that is usually you'll get like a cortisone or some type of cream.
That's what I got.
And it's not that those aren't helpful. They will treat the symptoms, but the problem is with something like that is you're driving the issue in deeper.
Correct.
So we're not allowing the skin to release, because sometimes usually things have to get better before they get worse because the skin is really trying to push it out.
Yeah, and you're not trying to overdo
Yeah.
everything. You're just kind of waking up here. So,
Right.
all right. So, quick review. So we talked a little about what's wrong with my kid. We're not trying to say there's anything wrong with your kid, but if you have these things, and we discussed ear infections, the bowel, the tummy, emotional distress, which kind of led into sleep, which is number 4.
Yep.
And last but not least is number 5
The skin.
is the skin.
And looking at putting on the skin things that are naturally occurring in nature. So whether it be, I've really gotten into tallow, because tallow is, from an animal. And so it matches up with the human body much better than even coconut oil. I still love coconut oil.
Yeah,
but
again,
tallow, I
back to
find, is
matching
really
up
great.
with nature.
Yep.
Whether it's avocado oil, almond oil, coconut oil, tallow.
Yes.
I mean, it's
You just want something that's not
and the
synthetic.
same thing goes with toothpaste.
Yep.
Think about all the
all the
stuff that
body
you
care
put in the body
products.
care products. Again,
Yes.
just step back, everybody, and say, hey, what's my toothpaste like? What kind of soaps do I use? All that stuff adds up, because that creates this toxicity if we don't allow the body to
Well, and
eliminate.
it's like with children, there's baby oil, there's all these
Yes.
different lotions. You just don't want something to be petroleum based,
Right.
because it's just going to sit on top of the
Just step
skin.
back. Don't get crazy with that.
Yeah.
All right. So as we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to discuss? One last thing, 2 things, anything? I think we covered a lot of ground
I
here.
think we did cover a lot of ground. I can tell you, though, if you're with my book, just so people understand, the back part of the book is where you look up the issue, like ear infections.
Yeah, this is such a great.
front part of the issue of the book is basically setting it up. What is
Yeah.
it you need in your diet? What is it you
What the
should
common
not
theme
avoid?
in your book is, it's very thin, and it's easy to just go, okay, it's not overwhelming everybody. So if you're interested in this, reach out to us. Remember, ontargetliving.com, and we'll answer any of your questions. I'll even put you in touch with my sister.
Yeah, for sure.
We talked the other day. She's retired, but she's not retired. We're just in the second wind, because she's got a lot more to give and share, and it's the same thing for me. As like, things are slowly transitioning, but we're not going away.
Yeah.
We still have a lot to share, and a lot of experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you have 38 years in your profession.
Yes.
And you're not done. It's just you're done with that stage of your life. So.
Right.
So if anybody has any question, remember, ontargetliving.com. We're happy to help you any way we can. And remember, you always have the power to feel your best. Hope you have a wonderful end of your November, and we'll see you next
Happy
time.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.